Today I'm joined by Beggart, co-founder and CEO of Fabulingua. He's a serial entrepreneur with more than 20 years of experience building startups around the world. Together with his wife Leslie, he created Fabulingua, a mobile game that helps children learn new languages. Marx, thanks for joining me. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. That was a excellent introduction. Thank you. Happy to
Thanks.
be here.
So before we start, or actually, can you start by sharing what Fabulingua does and what your role looks like?
Sure, of course. Well, I think you sort of said it well. We're a story-based game that teaches children languages. We believe that languages aren't memorized; they're absorbed. All of our both technical, academic, and personal experience has led us to this particular conclusion. And I think we can all sort of share anecdotes in our own lives around the people that we've spent time with, or that we know that speak multiple languages. That is the case. You think of children or people that have grown up in households where there's more than one language spoken. You know, they're absorbing that language, they're immersed in that language, they're getting language input that's being made comprehensible in their daily lives. You think of people that have traveled abroad and lived perhaps in a foreign country for a period of time in which they began to assimilate and absorb the language around them. You can think of something as simple as having a partner, a girlfriend or a boyfriend that speaks another language, and how you sort of absorb that language through that relationship, through those touch points. So it's no secret that most people that have studied a language in the traditional way, which is sort of rote memorization, rule-based learning, that language does not stick. We always hear about stories people that have said, oh, I studied for this many years in middle school and high school and college, and I can only speak, a few words or a few phrases. And certainly either my pronunciation or my comprehension is very poor. So we believe that reaching children as early as possible is the best time when their brains are naturally wiring to new language input. And we believe that the best way to learn a language is through this sort of absorption method, which is based on a second language acquisition theory known as comprehensible input. And we create comprehensible input out of interactive children's stories, and we wrap it in sort of game design to make it engaging and fun for the kids. That's Fabulingua.
Great. Thanks for that explanation. I was really amazed when I prepared for this interview because I grew up with German and Punjabi. So my parents are both from India, and the effect of growing up bilingual really fascinated me. What an effect it has on the brain, on the development, and also your tactic that you're story-based to have a more active way of learning.
Yeah. Also, I mean, it's sort of the underlying benefits of learning a second language are, for the most part, obvious, but it's certainly baked into our mission, right? We believe that learning a new language opens doors in life, and I'm sure you've experienced this yourself. And so to give children this unique opportunity to effectively teach them a new language so that they can open doors in their lives is really a goal of ours, a mission of ours. And we started out teaching Spanish to English language learners because that was our sort of particular personal experience with our children. My co-founder, Leslie, grew up outside of Barcelona, Spain, in a household where they spoke English, but also she had Spanish around her. She then moved to Germany for a short period of time, and then to the UK, where they taught French. She even came out to Shanghai, China, when I was starting a business out there. And all of those experiences, she was very facile with new languages, which is really cool. And so it's opened a lot of doors in her life, and we wanted to give that to our kids. Now, the next sort of step for us, which is coming very soon, and it's really exciting, is going to be when we flip the script and we begin to teach English to Spanish-speaking children. And that will sort of open then the next door, which is teaching English to really any non-English native speaking learner, which we think is providing extraordinary benefits to kids and give them a solid foundation for learning English going forward and opening up, as I said, all sorts of different doors economically, principally, but also socially and academically as well.
Yeah, it's actually really nice to have an app like that, also a different kind of approach to go at it.
Yeah. It's we've been sort of called the Duolingo for kids, but we're very different to Duolingo. They
Mhm.
sort of gamify lessons and in a traditional sort of learning method. We are an actual mobile game where, you are on a journey through the island of Fabulingua, discovering new locations and reading stories. And of course, we don't use sort of memorization lesson based
Mhm.
learning. We use comprehensible input in this sort of absorption method.
And what has been the biggest challenge so far while growing Fabulingua?
Well, I think anytime you're building a new technology, particularly one that is reframing how languages or how a particular how we've done things in the past, whether or not we've been successful at it or not, it's always one challenging to sort of build the product, right? I mean, we are building a mobile game that typically takes a really long time.
Mhm.
There's a lot into it. There's a lot of production and art and assets and thinking and game logic and design and learning logic that goes into it. The other thing is that you need to be able to communicate effectively to your audience and demonstrate how you're different, demonstrate how you've reframed things. Has traditionally been something that's been frustrating for people because they haven't been effective at learning a new language, can be successful, can be effective, can work for their kids. And they can give this huge gift, this benefit to their kids if they believe in what Fabulingua is doing and how we're approaching it.
Mhm.
So, those are obviously challenges for any startup, but it gives you also the it's we have the opportunity to make a really big impact. So that's exciting.
It sounds really interesting. So I had a quite a fun time learning about your company and your journey, and also like your approach is different. That you don't approach schools,
Mhm.
but you approach the families, children, and their families directly, and work with teachers.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll tell you a little bit about that. So originally we had essentially sort of built a product and app for other families like ours. And so we started on the App Store and Google Play Store, and we're just a downloadable app. But and the reception was great. But at some point, really early in the journey, within the first 12 to 18 months, we observed that there were a lot of teachers who were inquiring about using it in their classroom and how do they create accounts for their students or profiles for their kids, and how can they use it. And we initially, we listened to this and wondered, okay, is this an interesting market to approach? How do we do this? Ultimately the demand just grew and grew, and so we said, okay, well, this is a really unique opportunity to sort of differentiate our product, because teachers are, the sort of expert witness, so to speak. And so if we can get teachers to advocate for us, if we can get them to sort of champion our product, then we certainly can stand out from any other sort of language learning platform for children. But we need to give the teachers a really good product. So we need to build effectively what is almost like a SaaS platform, but it's a teacher dashboard. It's got all sorts of tools and resources and ways for a teacher to very quickly get up and running and be using the product with their students, be able to create assignments, track progress, all that kind of great stuff that teachers want to do, and get
Mhm.
insights into what's happening. So rolled that out as a beta the sort of last year, had a really great reception. A bunch of users came on board. And then this year, to the start of the school year, we've changed our model a little bit. We're now charging teachers sort of a small amount um, that doesn't require sort of a school or a
Mhm.
district approval, but still gets them sort of engaged and has some skin in the game. And thus far, we've seen some really encouraging signs of adoption. So I'm excited about rolling this out broader over
Mm.
the next year.
Yeah, I think it's a great sign or a proof of concept if a teacher is recommending a tool and is interacting with it as well.
Yeah, that's what we thought. Like that's definitely how you break through the noise. And I'm really excited to get an English language learner version in the hands of these teachers in schools as well, because they often very much have counterparts, or even if they're in dual language classes that are teaching young kids English here in the United States,
Mhm.
where it's absolutely critical that we serve these young English language learners so that they become sort of not only proficient but fluent
Mhm.
at an early age, so that they can sort of meaningfully participate in their academic progress, right? So Yeah, I'm excited about that. I think there's a real opportunity and need, a big need there.
Yeah, as an English learner myself, I can agree. If there's a good tool to improve your English, English is the language of the world. There for sure is a need.
Yeah, yeah, yes. I'm excited to get our product into Latin America,
Hmm.
probably starting with Mexico and then to other Latin American countries. I'm excited to get it into Asia, including the Asia subcontinent as well. I'm teaching English to non-English speakers everywhere from sort of India to Japan to China to Indonesia. I think those are really interesting markets. And what we've learned is that there's a major demand, major need in this market segment, which is this sort of 4 years old up to sort of 10-year-old segment. There's
Hmm.
really not many good products. There's really very few, if any,
Yeah,
products that are both effective and engaging for this age group that these kids want to come back and do, and they're also, effectively learning the language and providing at least a strong foundation for them to grow from, to gain some
yeah,
confidence, to see the opportunity in learning English.
great. So meaning your next step is to go into the Latin American markets, switching from Spanish to English, and then Asia next, and going more broad with the language selection.
That's correct.
That sounds fascinating. Well, working with so many like children, families, and teachers, you probably get loads of feedback. What has surprised you the most about their feedback?
Well, I think the number one thing that's surprised me is that teachers have felt so left out of the education sort of technology, at least this elementary school age teacher, and particularly language teachers have felt left out of kind of the education technology
Hmm.
boom. They've been still using older traditional resources, content, and curriculum, and so when they see Fabulingua is available, they get really excited, and then of course they see what it looks like. They see the graphics, they see the animation, they see the sort of delight that in their kids' responses. It's amazing. So the amount of really positive feedback and testimonials from teachers has been really thrilling, and I can't wait to bring it to sort of English language learning teachers as well. I think there's a dearth of resources there. The other thing, it's not so surprising, is that story-based learning is very intuitive, and so parents, families gravitate towards that. Kids love that. It's just, this is how we need to be teaching and engaging our
Hmm.
children across all subject matter, finding engagement in context, finding engagement in sort of stories or real world applications, et cetera, versus more of a traditional industrialized education method where you have a single individual standing in front of a group
Hmm.
teaching them all at the exact same level, in sort of a lecture type lesson by lesson format. Learning needs to be personalized. It needs to meet the child at their own sort of level and pace them accordingly. And it needs to be engaging. Well, why can't it be engaging? Engagement, we know what kids like to do. Kids love stories. We know that kids love to play games. We know that they love to play. So can we make sure that we're sort of presenting learning and incorporating learning into those things?
What does story-based learning look like in practice?
For us, it's essentially presenting the target language in a story and having a narrator read the story to the learner, to the child, in that target language with the target text there. So we're also developing literacy, which is really great. But we have a particular patent, which is our sort of secret sauce of how we deliver this new language input in a comprehensible way. That's called magical translation. So effectively, as you're as the narrator is reading the story and you're taking in the visuals of the illustrations and some of the interactions and animation, um, the narrator is reading it in the target language and then weaving in a sort of subtle translation into your own language so that you can begin to understand and connect what's happening and what you're hearing in the target language with your own language. And we do that the first time through the story. And then there are different ways in which you engage with the story again and again, and we've removed that at the next time. So you don't get the magical translations the second or third or fourth time as you scaffold your way through the story, but yet you've already developed a understanding and a notion of what's happening in the story and why. So again, as I said, children's brains naturally wire to new language input, and so it's miraculous even how quickly they are able to sort of pick up when it's all presented in sort of this comprehensible way. And of course, you know, we have interactions. We built the product, with game design in mind. We built the stories with interactivity in mind, and so the pages of these stories come to life with interactivity, and there's a learning at every sort of interaction or touch or tap, or so it's pretty fun.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I wrote you for the interview was a couple of months ago I started reading the book Story Brand, and I realized like sales and marketing is much about stories, and then I saw similarities in each area of life, that humans naturally tend to stories, and it's easier to comprehend if it is packed in a story. Otherwise, if it's just facts, specs, and numbers, you just zone out. So
yeah. Well, we remember stories. I think retention is sort of the best outcome from story-based learning. We're able to put it in context. We're able to sort of follow an arc. We remember the characters. Remember if there's visuals associated with it, we remember those visuals, and so it just sticks better. We retain it better.
nice approach.
Yeah, yeah. If you're having fun too, you remember things, right? If you're gaining a level of enjoyment and you're not in sort of a stress response condition, then that in second language acquisition theory, there's a principle called sort of affective filter, which is that if you're feeling any sort of stress or anxiety, then a sort of a filter comes up and you are unable to access a part of the brain that sort of retains language or is able to make that language sort of comprehensible and stick. But when you're in a relaxed state, and then that affective filter comes down, and so therefore that which you're getting exposed to is retained more easily. And the way that you lower the affective filter or you create that sort of relaxing state is by making sure that the children are enjoying what they're doing and sort of having fun and interested and engaged.
It's very fascinating.
Yeah. There's a lot of science to it. It's not just, stories in a game. There's some real science behind it and academic research behind it. And we're effectively productizing that science, that academic research that a lot of language teachers have already known and have been incorporating into their class through their own, will and actions and dancing and all that kind of stuff. And we've just created a different type of vehicle for comprehensible, but to support them, that they see and understand and get really jazzed about, because it's playing off or aligned with the way that they want to teach.
Yeah, for sure. I was fascinated. Like at the beginning, I was like, okay, that's an interesting business concept or business idea. But when I did my research and the first video I saw was your YouTube video, the introduction video, where you talked about all the benefits growing up bilingually has on the brain and general your decision-making process. And I fact-checked that and was really fascinated. I haven't heard about it at any time, that it has so many benefits.
Well, you're the beneficiary.
Yeah.
German and Punjabi. You didn't realize it, but yes, you've got it. Not only probably a more developed sense of executive functioning, you've also are able to task switch easier than monolingual people. And then there's a third element, which is this idea of empathy, which is this that in sort of the theory of mind concept, that you understand and appreciate that there are more than one way to say and view and see our world, and so therefore you're naturally developing the seeds of empathy that come through that viewpoint, that perspective, which is unique to sort of bilingualism.
Yeah, the approach of Fabulingua has made me think about my approach to language. Is it also possible, like for most of the research was about younger people, but if you're a bit older, maybe, what's the research on that?
It's the same in the sense that, you know, the best way to the most effective, the most efficient and effective way to learn a second language is through comprehensible input. And this isn't to say that, you know, down the line you don't need to learn how to conjugate verbs effectively and do all of the other grammatical work that we start to do when we're in third, fourth, fifth grade and continue when you're sort of analyzing sentence structure and things like that. That's supportive of your language development, linguistic development. But it's not where you should start. Where you should start, like we all do, and we're 0, 1, 2, 3 years old, is through as much input, language input as possible that's made comprehensible in the context of your you know, it's one of the ways why it's one of the reasons why we're always taught to sort of read as much as we can to our children at an early age, to give them more language input, to let them see and understand that there's more outside of their sort of living existence in the world, right? But for adults, it's the same. And that's why I was using that analogy earlier. You know, I remember getting comprehensible input when I was in my early 20s and I'd gone to Spain and lived there for a little bit. And, you know, just playing basketball down at a park with, you know, a bunch of Spaniards who were speaking Spanish, I was able to pick up the language because I knew how to play basketball. And so I knew when they were saying a shot, what a shot was and a pass and, you know, move here. And so through that input that was being made comprehensible through my actions and knowledge of the game, you know, it was a really effective way to learn.
Yeah, that's, I think, the fastest way to learn the language. Also, like in sports, there's so many different people from around the world in a football club or a basketball club, and
Yeah,
they still
yeah.
communicate. Also, like you mentioned Spain, you've built companies in the US, Europe, and Asia. How did those experiences shape Fabulingua? Maybe you personally.
You know, so yes, I've worked in Asia, you know, and then I've also built a company in Shanghai, China that was international in scope, or certainly had a lot of international partners and content, et cetera. So my view of how that shaped me is to see that this company, Fabulingua, has the potential and is destined to sort of reach its potential through international expansion, and that's to reaching, you know, English language learners all over the world. And so I'm not intimidated by that. I'm excited
Nice.
about that, and I have the foundations of a network that can be supportive of that. Yeah.
Nice. What advice would you give other founders who want to build something with mission driven?
Mm. I would say, you know, it's hard. It takes time. So be prepared to spend the time on it. To be careful of climbing up, you know, the wrong mountain too early. So spend the time to really understand what your customer wants and build that versus sort of building what you think they want, and getting too far along and recognizing that you've spent too much money doing that. I would say um, I would say that there's a lot of people that are very supportive of mission-driven companies, and so I would make sure that they you connect with them because they probably have a lot of experience in what kind of impact you're going to make and how you can measure that impact. That's a big deal as well. That's how you get a lot of support. And would really try to sort of spend time understanding your business model, because some of the more social and impact driven businesses, you need to make sure that you know who your customer is and the customer has the money to be able to spend on your product to make it work, to make your business work.
Nice. Well, thanks for all that great input, Mark. Was a really fun interview. I learned
Yeah. Thank you.
also, like at the research part and also in the interview, I learned so much more about language and your app. If parents parents or children want to try the app, or teachers want to reach out, where can they find the app or reach out to you?
Sure. You can find the app, or you can learn more about Fabulingua at our website. We've just revamped the website in the last month or so. It's got tons of great information, not only for families, but also for homeschoolers,
Mhm.
homeschooling families, I should say, and also for teachers or charter schools or education savings accounts, et cetera, in the United States. That's the best place, and that's www.fabulingua.com, FABULINGUA.com. Well, of course, we're on the App Store and Google Play Store, where you can download. And then also on our website, you can also see where the teacher dashboard is, so you can get a lot of information as a teacher there. And if you want to learn more about when we're sort of releasing our English version and what markets and languages we're going to do, you can reach out to us at support@fabulingua.com. We'd be happy to have a conversation with you.
Awesome. I will link all these links in the show notes. So